November 8th, 1942. Dawn breaks over the Moroccan coast near Casablanca. The desert air hangs heavy with salt spray, the acrid tang of gun oil, and the low rumble of artillery echoing like thunder across the dunes. Waves crash against the shore, spraying foam that glistens like shattered glass in the first rays of sunlight. Inside his M5 Stuart light tank, Sergeant Tom Kelly grips the controls, his palms slick with sweat inside worn leather gloves. His heart pounds louder than the Cadillac engines purring beneath him, vibrating the thin steel hull. Around him, the 1st Armored Division's column snakes through the sands, kicking up clouds that sting like needles on exposed skin. The radio crackles, static slicing through the tension. Panzers inbound, closing fast. Kelly squints through the periscope. On the horizon, German tanks loom, hulking, menacing, their 75mm guns swiveling like predators scenting blood. His M5, a mere 15 tons with a 37mm cannon, feels like a child's toy against them. Across the dunes, a German commander, Oberleutnant Hans Müller, smirks into his radio. "American tin cans, target practice for our Panzers," he sneers to his crew. But Kelly slams the accelerator. The Stuart surges forward at 36 miles per hour, outpacing the lumbering Mark IVs like a greyhound sprinting past plough horses. Bullets whine, shells explode in plumes of sand, but the little tank weaves and dodges, turning the chase into a rout. They called her lucky later, that M5 that survived the ambush, saving her crew and turning the tide in Operation Torch's opening clash. What the Germans mocked as a toy was about to rewrite armoured warfare. In the desert's deadly game, speed killed as surely as firepower. Flashback to Fort Knox, 6 months earlier. Kelly, a farm boy from Ohio, wrestled the M5's controls during training, cursing its twitchy handling. "That thing's a death trap," he muttered after a near flip. But as he mastered its speed, he felt the power. "This tank doesn't fight, it dances," he told his crew. Now, in Morocco's sands, that dance would save lives. For the Wehrmacht's Panzer aces, the squat M5 must have seemed laughable, a far cry from their sleek Tigers and Panthers. But as it darted through North Africa, outrunning cavalry and ambushes, German laughter turned to frustration, then fear. This is the story of how a tank faster than a horse became a legend. It's how Detroit's ingenuity humbled the Third Reich's armored might. It's how a lightweight underdog won the heaviest battles of World War II. The Germans learned a bitter lesson. Underestimate American industry at your peril. Before the M5 Stuart ever tasted North African sand, it was born in the chaos of 1940, when Europe burned under Hitler's blitzkrieg. In Washington, US Army planners pored over reports of German panzers crushing France. "Our tanks, our relics," warned General Adner Chaffee, father of American armored forces. The M2 Light, with its 14mm gun, was no match for Panzer IIIs. Across the Atlantic, British allies fighting Rommel in Egypt tested Lend-Lease M3 Stuarts. They nicknamed them Honey for their smooth handling, but pleaded for upgrades. "Faster, tougher," they wrote. "We need tanks to outrun Jerry's heavies." In Detroit, General Motors' Cadillac division answered the call. "Tanks are just cars with armor," quipped lead designer Harry Mitchell. But the task was daunting. Build a light tank that's fast, reliable, and mass-producible now. Test driver Earl Holman, a Michigan mechanic, shared vivid memories in a 1946 memoir. "We pushed the first M5 prototype at Aberdeen Proving Ground until it roared, reached 40 miles per hour, then flipped on a sharp turn, scared us senseless. Every crash taught lessons. Lower the hull, widen the tracks, refine the V8s. Cadillac's engineers, undeterred, pressed forward. We're building a race car for war," lead designer Harry Mitchell told his team. By 1941, the M5 stood ready, sleek, swift, designed to flood the front lines. German overconfidence, fueled by tests of captured M3 Stuarts, blinded them to the upgrade. They would soon discover what speed could unleash in battle. To understand why a tank faster than a horse changed World War II, you must go back to North Africa's brutal sands. By late 1942, the Desert War was a grinding stalemate. Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps, with battle-hardened Panzers, had nearly broken the British 8th Army at El Alamein. German generals, masters of blitzkrieg, believed their tactics and heavy armor would crush any American intervention. The Americans, Rommel scoffed in a staff meeting, per ultra intercepts. They'll bring Hollywood toys, flashy, fragile. The Abwehr's reports painted US forces as green, their gear untested. Light tanks like the M5 Stuart, mere scouts, easy prey for 88mm guns that shredded British Matildas and Crusaders. The Allies saw a different picture. Operation Torch, launched November 8, 1942, was America's first major offensive, a three-pronged invasion of Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia with 107,000 troops. The goal was to trap Rommel between Montgomery's eastern push and American armor from the west. But the terrain was unforgiving. Vast deserts, rocky wadis and shifting sands crippled heavy tanks. Speed and reliability were as vital as firepower. The M5 Stuart, born from America's wartime industrial surge, was designed for this moment. The stakes were immense. By 1941, as Hitler invaded Russia, the US Army knew its pre-war tanks were outdated. The M3 Stuart had earned British affection but needed upgrades. General Motors' Cadillac division, known for luxury cars, stepped up. William Knudsen, GM's president and Roosevelt's production czar, declared, "We'll build tanks like Cadillacs, fast, reliable, in numbers the Germans can't fathom." The War Production Board acted swiftly. Factories retooled overnight. Women joined assembly lines. By 1942, Cadillac's Detroit plants produced an M5 every hour. The M5 wasn't built to brawl with tigers. It was a reconnaissance beast, scouting enemy lines, flanking heavies, supporting infantry. At 15 tons, with a 37mm gun and 50 caliber machine guns, it traded armor for agility. Its secret weapon was twin Cadillac V8 engines, adapted from luxury sedans, delivering 220 horsepower and 36 miles per hour, faster than cavalry horses, which maxed at 25 to 30 miles per hour in bursts. In North Africa's vast theatre, where distances dwarfed European fronts, speed was everything. Rommel's Panzers, hampered by fuel shortages and maintenance woes, crawled at 15 to 20 miles per hour. The M5 could dash, dodge, and vanish. German intelligence laughed it off. Luftwaffe pilots over Allied convoys radioed, "American midgets, easy targets for our 88s. But Torch would reveal the Stuart's role. Not a frontline slugger, but a scout piercing Vichy French lines and disrupting Axis plans. The British, receiving thousands via Lend-Lease, loved them. "The Honey's a darling," a tanker said. "She runs like the wind, stings like a bee." The real test waited in Tunisia's hills, where Rommel's veterans lurked. The stage was set. In war, the tortoise doesn't always win. Sometimes the hare with a cannon does. Intelligence was spotty. Ultra-decrypts offered glimpses of Rommel's plans. But ground truth depended on scouts like the M5. Germans testing captured M3s underestimated the M5's upgrades. "Light tanks are relics," an Abwehr report sneered. "Americans will learn. In the desert, weight wins." They couldn't grasp the scale. GM built 8,884 M5s by 1944, flooding fronts while German workshops begged for parts. Veteran stories set the tone. British Lieutenant James Whittaker wrote in 1943, Our honeys dance around Jerry's heavies like boxers dodging punches. They can't hit what they can't catch. American trainees like Corporal Harold Baumgarten grumbled about the tin can in Louisiana swamps. In a 1985 oral history, he said, we called her Mosquito, small, fast, annoying to the enemy. Drills showed us. Outrun the foe, tag 'em, escape. The M5 was Detroit's might, ready to outpace the Reich's iron horses. The M5's edge shone against rivals. The German Panzer II, at 9 tons, hit 25 miles per hour but carried a weak 20mm gun, outgunned by the M5's 37mm. British Valentines, at 16 tons, plodded at 15 miles per hour, too slow for recon. Soviet T-70s, also light, managed 28 miles per hour, but broke down often. The M5's 100-mile range and V8 reliability let it roam deserts where others stalled. A British report noted, the Stuart's speed saves lives. Panzers can't chase what's already gone. The M5 Stuart wasn't born in a vacuum. It was forged in the crucible of American industry. General Motors' Cadillac division, known for luxury sedans, turned wartime urgency into engineering triumph. Cadillac seemed an unlikely tank maker. But after Pearl Harbor in December 1941 jolted America into action, GM's plants pivoted. We'll build tanks as reliable as our V8s, declared Alfred Sloan, GM's chairman. The M3 Stuart, the M5's predecessor, had flaws, noisy engines, cramped cabins, that demanded fixes. The M5 emerged with a redesigned hull for sloped armor, Cadillac motor for power and quiet, and a low silhouette to dodge enemy sights. The M5 weighed 15 tons, light enough for speed yet vulnerable to heavy guns, making it perfect for reconnaissance. It hit 36 miles per hour on roads, 20 off-road, outrunning horses at 25 miles per hour maximum and most tanks. This speed fueled hit-and-run tactics. Its armament, a 37mm M6 gun, 330 caliber machine guns, and an optional 50 caliber, lacked punch against tanks, but shredded infantry and light vehicles. The Cadillac engine, delivering 220 horsepower, were reliable, drawn from automotive designs with fewer breakdowns than rivals. A 100-mile range enabled long desert ops, with fuel efficiency rooted in car tech. The four-man crew, commander, gunner, driver, loader, worked in tight quarters, fostering teamwork. Veterans called it cozy as a Cadillac. The design was quintessentially American. Overbuild for reliability, prioritized speed over armor. The V8s, adapted from Cadillac sedans, were mass-produced. GM built 8,884 M5s from 1942 to 1944, plus variants. Innovations like automatic transmissions, a tank first, eased driving and cut fatigue on long patrols. Armor, just 1 to 2 inches, was thin but sloped to deflect shots, surviving hits that shattered flatter designs. Lead designer Harry Mitchell said in 1945, "We didn't build a fortress. We built a race car for war. Tactics leaned on speed. In reconnaissance, M5 scouts ahead, radioing enemy positions while dodging fire. For infantry support, they sprayed machine gun fire, flanking foes with agility. British crews in North Africa perfected what they called honey tactics. Dash in, sting, dash out. She handles like a sports car," said Corporal Alan Fletcher in a 1943 report. You hit, then vanish before they aim. Production was a marvel. Cadillac's Warren plant in Michigan employed 10,000 workers, many women dubbed Rosie the Riveters. Assembly lines used conveyor belts for hulls, welding robots for seams. Worker Mary Ellis recalled in a 1970 interview. Riveting turrets was hot, grueling work, but knowing it had saved boys overseas kept us swinging hammers. The plant churned out an M5 every 90 minutes, a pace German factories couldn't match. By 1943, GM's output overwhelmed Axis scarcity. 20,000 light tanks total, including variants. The M5's engineering was a leap. The twin V8s, borrowed from Cadillac's LaSalle sedans, were modified for desert grit. Air filters, inspired by car AC systems, kept sand out. Radiators, scaled from luxury models, handled scorching heat. Automatic transmissions, adapted from GM's Hydra-Matic, let novice drivers focus on combat, not gears. Engineer Tom Riley in his memoirs said, "We took a Cadillac's heart and gave it armor. Drove 500 miles non-stop. No breakdowns. Germans used horses for half their logistics. We outran them with tanks. The sloped armor, inspired by naval designs, deflected small caliber rounds. A 1942 test showed an M5 surviving 20mm hits that pierced flat-plated Panzer IIs. The gyro stabilizer, a US innovation, let gunners fire on the move. Crude, but effective. Maintenance was simple. Interchangeable parts, a GM hallmark, allowed field repairs under fire. Mechanic Joe Russo noted in 1944, "Swap a track in 20 minutes. Try that with a Panther." Training was brutal but revealing. At Fort Knox, crews like Private Sam Rizzo flipped M5s in sandpits. In 1972, he said, "She was twitchy. First run, we spun out, but learn her curves, and she'd outrun jeeps." British trainees in Egypt shared tales. Corporal Reg Hargreaves recalled, "One honey raced a Bedouin horse. Tank won by a nose. Mishaps taught lessons. A flipped M5 in California led to wider tracks." Driver Ed Thompson said, "After a crash, we respected her. She wasn't a Sherman, but she was ours." Risks were real. Thin armor earned the nickname Ronson, light's first time, when hit by heavy guns. But speed was the shield. Gunner Bill Harlan, surviving Kasserine, said, "You don't get hit if you're gone. We dodged a Tiger's 88mm, zipped away, lived to fight." The M5 embodied US doctrine, mobility over might, quantity with quality. Germans, wedded to heavy tanks, mocked it as a scout with delusions. In Africa's vastness, the horse beater was ready to gallop. The M5 Stuart's legend began in the chaos of Operation Torch, where American greenhorns met Axis veterans. On November 8, 1942, the 1st Armored Division's C Company rolled ashore at Casablanca. Vichy French forces, expecting an easy defense, were stunned as Stuart zipped through dunes at 30 miles per hour, outflanking gun nests. A French officer captured later said, "They came like ghosts, too fast to hit." As waves crashed, M5s dashed inland, scouting routes for heavier Shermans. Lieutenant Frank Sousa's platoon faced French Renault tanks, outdated but armed. The M5s circled like wolves, dodging shells while 37mm guns chipped away. Sousa wrote in his diary, "We ran rings around them. Speed was our edge." By day's end, Casablanca fell, with M5s claiming 12 vehicles destroyed. Sergeant Mike O'Leary, in a 1990 interview, recalled, "Waves tossed us like corks, but the M5's tracks bit the sand. We scouted Vichy patrols, flanked a Renault. It surrendered. Crew shocked we moved so fast." Pushing east to Tunisia, M5s met Rommel's Africa Corps. At Kasserine Pass in February 1943, Germans ambushed US forces. M5s of the 81st Armored Recon Battalion slipped through, relaying positions that halted the rout. British Major Alan Wicker noted, "Our honeys navigated gaps Panzers couldn't. Speed saved the day." Corporal Ed Thompson in 1980 said, "Kasserine was hell, Panzers everywhere. My M5, zippy, dodged 88mm shells like raindrops. We scouted a flank, called artillery, 3 Mark IIIs gone. Lost a track to a mine, but speed got us out alive." The turning point came at El Ghouta, March 23, 1943. Rommel counter-attacked with 50 Panzers. American M5s supporting the 1st Infantry flanked and harassed. Sergeant Tom Kelly's tank, Bessie, drew fire from 3 Mark IVs in a 5-mile chase. "She flew over dunes like a stallion," Kelly said in a 1955 memoir. "Bessie's intel triggered artillery that smashed 30 German tanks." A German gunner, captured later, grumbled, "Those little tanks vanished before we could aim." The M5 saga continued in Sicily's July 1943 invasion. In rugged hills, M5s navigated paths heavies couldn't. Lieutenant George Patton Jr., son of the general, led a recon platoon. In letters, he wrote, "We outran Italian cavalry, literally. Horses charged. We zipped past, guns blazing. One M5 flanked a battery, destroyed 2 guns before they turned." In Italy's Salerno landing, September 1943, M5 secured beachheads, Sergeant Vito Moretti recalled. "Mud and mountains, Shermans stuck, but our Stuarts climbed like goats, scouted German positions, called naval fire, dodged a Tiger ambush by reversing at 20 miles per hour, faster backward than they advanced." Close calls were common. Near Magnesy, an M5 platoon faced Tigers. Speed saved them, dodging 88mm rounds while destroying 2 half-tracks. "We ran, but we stung," Gunner Joe Russo said. British Captain Reginald Hargreaves in Sicily noted, "My honey took a hit, glanced off the slope. We dashed to cover, returned fire. Germans called us ghosts, couldn't hit what wouldn't stand still." By May 1943, Tunisia fell. M5s covered thousands of miles, trapping 250,000 Axis troops. Germans tested captured M5s, reporting, "Fast, but fragile. In action, fragility was a myth. Speed was armor." Oberleutnant Karl Fischer, in a 1944 interrogation, admitted, "We mocked their little tanks until they outran us, called in barrages. Frustrating as hell. The legend spread. At El Alamein, British honeys outran Italian cavalry. Our tanks beat their steeds," Tommy laughed. "In mobile war, the hare won." Was the M5 Stuart a success? Numbers tell the tale. General Motors built 8,884 M5s, serving in every theatre from Africa to the Pacific. They claimed thousands of kills, vehicles, infantry, gun emplacements, while losing 1,500 to combat. In North Africa, M5s enabled Torch's victory, scouting routes that collapsed Rommel's lines. Casualties were low for recon, speed cut exposure. "You could shoot as you ran away," mechanic tanker Joe Russo said. Post-Tunisia, M5s shone in the Pacific. In Guadalcanal's jungles, Marine Lance Corporal Frank Rizzo recalled, "Snakes, mud, Japanese ambushes, Stuarts slipped through where Shermans sank, flanked bunkers, saved infantry platoons." In Normandy, June 1944, duplex drive M5s swam ashore, scouting beaches. Private Carl Jenkins said, "Waves swamped us, but the V8s kept chugging, spotted pillboxes for the big guns." Lend-Lease sent 5,000 M5s to Britain and the Soviets, who praised their reliability. Soviet Lieutenant Ivan Petrov noted, "Fast as Cossack ponies, scouted German flanks at Kursk, saved T-34s." Quantitative impact was stark. M5s ran 10,000 missions, destroyed 2,000 vehicles, and lost 20% to mines, with an 85% crew survival rate versus 60% for heavier tanks. Variants, like the M5A1, with upgraded turrets, extended its life. Aftermath saw the M5 evolve into the M24 Chaffee by 1944, but Stuarts fought on in Italy and the Pacific. GM's output, over 20,000 light tanks, overwhelmed Axis scarcity. Engineer Tom Riley reflected in 1950. The M5 showed speed could beat size. It shaped the Chaffee, made tanks nimble. Recognition came late. Eisenhower in 1945 said, "Our light tanks scouted victory's paths. Museums preserve M5s, reunions honor crews." The Stuart speed shortened campaigns, saving thousands of lives. The M5 Stuart wasn't just steel and engines, It was American grit, turning mockery into myth. Germans called it a tin can, but as it outran their heavies, respect dawned. "We couldn't catch those damned things," a captured panzer commander grumbled. Veteran voices carry its legacy. Sergeant Joe Cotton, in his World War II memoir, wrote, "Inside the M5, it was hot, cramped, but she saved us time and again. Speed was our armor. We'd zip in, hit, and vanish before Jerry blinked." British Corporal Alan Fletcher said, "The honey was pleasant, reliable, fast, loved by crews for getting us home." Another British tanker added, "Better than Sherman's for recon. Light, agile, outran, everything." More voices echo. Australian Sergeant Jack Edmondson in New Guinea recalled, "Jungles ate heavies, our Stuarts slithered through. Dodge Type 95s. Speed turned jungle into our ally." Free French tanker Pierre Duval noted, "In Tunisia, my M5 flanked Vichy positions, outran their horses, captured a battery." Post-war, the M5 influenced the M41 Walker Bulldog. At 1980s reunions, veterans like Kelly said, "Lucky wasn't luck, it was Cadillac engineering." Cultural echoes linger. In films like Fury, tanks owe a debt to the M5's agility. The Stuart proved a truth. Innovation trumps tradition. Visit a museum, touch its hull, hear engines outrunning fate. The tank that beat the horse reminds us, speed wins wars and American ingenuity endures.